We have a motion for the consent calendar. There's a motion, and we call roll on the consent calendar, please.
Bell.
Aye.
Bell, I. Canella.
Aye.
Canella, I. Allen. Bates. Bates, I. Gaines. Gaines, I. Galgiani. Leyva. Leyva, I. McGuire. Mendoza. Roth. Roth, I. Wachowski.
The consent calendar has 6 votes, and we'll leave it open for other members to attend and approve and vote on the consent calendar. So it has now 6 votes. So we have item 14. We have Assemblymember Bigelow, who has a bill that we've been working on. It's work in progress. So, Assemblymember, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Today I'm here to present AB 995, which adds specifically defined onion hauling trucks to the list of farm vehicles that are exempt from DMV registration. I would like to thank the chair and his staff for working so closely with my staff and for the understanding why this bill is so important, not only to me, but the constituents and the many people in California's agricultural community. AB 995.
Push the mic a little closer.
AB 995. You know, earlier this morning, the tone was just right. Okay. It's changed today. AB 995 would allow our onion farmers to operate with a little more flexibility without compromising the safety of other drivers on the road. Many other crops already receive similar flexibility. AB 995 is a very narrow version of the changes I would ideally like to see happen for our farmers using California transportation systems. While I'm disappointed we could not reach consensus on this exact bill before us today, I am grateful to the chairman and the committee for allowing us to have a brief yet important conversation about the need for the comprehensive proposal as it relates to hauling and harvesting of all the different crops grown in California. Luckily for agricultural producing areas of the state, we have bipartisan representation on this committee who come from some of our state's most vibrant agricultural communities. Whether you represent an urban or rural district, we can all agree we have to find a way to allow producers to travel further than 1 mile from the point of harvest to where crops are being stored. Today's terrible drought is just one example of why we must find a way to give our producers the flexibility they need to keep producing the safest, most abundant food supply in the world. Members, the outdated language that is currently in California Vehicle Code does not work for California's agricultural industry. Traveling a maximum of 1 mile on our highway systems is not feasible for our farmers when their processing facilities are more than 1 mile from their fields. Paying weight fees based on a simple configuration of a pickup bed is confusing for our farmers and ranchers, as these registration fees can range from a few $100s to more than $1,000. Our farmers and ranchers are obligated to obtain several permits to operate during specific hours and keep tedious logbooks. Members, the federal government is working with states on the implementation of the Federal Transportation Spending Bill for fiscal year 2013-2014, also known as MAP 21. There are considerable provisions for farmers and ranchers in this legislation that states will be required to implement in order to receive federal funding. Agricultural stakeholders, relevant state agencies, and the legislature should be working now to address these issues prior to the federal deadline. In closing, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement. While this is not the ideal outcome for AB 995, I would like to hold off on a vote today to allow stakeholders, members of this committee, and members of the Assembly Transportation Committee to come together and find a comprehensive solution for California's farmers who transport and harvest to feed the world. With that, I'm available for questions.
Yes, I appreciate your effort, and we're going to continue to work with you now that you make this essentially a 2-year bill. So we're going to continue to work with you on this, and you know, we have to kind of get the DMV, the Highway Patrol, others all together and start discussing the bill and come to some reasonable conclusion. So I promise you I'll be working with you on this.
Thank you,
Senator Canella.
Just a brief
Thank you, Mr. Bigelow, for bringing this forward. I represent, I think all my counties are ag counties. That's their largest export, if you will. And San Benito County is one of the counties I represent. And when I first was elected, there was a situation where they would, county roads for the most part, very rural in nature, and they would go harvest whatever crop they were harvesting, and the CHP would ticket them anytime they went into the road. So it was impossible for them to harvest their crops. And we ultimately worked it out by having a meeting with the CHP and trying to develop routes. But it is really a problem when you try to get your crops out of the field and you're violating the law by bringing these trucks onto the road. So it's much bigger than just onion haulers. It's a really big problem. So hopefully, while we're working on this 2-year bill, we can look at expanding a little bit to give other folks that are trying to harvest their fields the ability to do so. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Bates.
I'd like to jump on to some Member Bigelow. We have, as you know, in the San Diego County, it's the avocado land, and we don't want to impact guacamole for sure. But I know the safety is the issue. Could you comment a little on the commitment there of, on the safety issues? Because I know that's what you're really focused on, and I appreciate the conversations your staff has had with mine, because I think that's uppermost in all of our minds to achieve when we do, the interim work.
Well, simplistically put, and I think the chairman and I have worked a lot of times together, not only with him in the Senate and me in the Assembly of recent, but we've worked well together in the past as former county supervisors as you. And it's interesting as we take a look. What starts out as something very simple and very focused, we see a need for broadening it, such as this. And with, like you say, with the avocado industry in your area and the needs that they have there, it broadened the entire outlook. And members, to share with you, this came off the Assembly floor with a 78 vote. And then it came here, and then there was just a little outcry from a state agency, if I will. Yeah. Got to be so kind. And so it was their request that we go to and broaden it. And hence, that's the reason for looking at that, making sure that their needs, their concerns of safety are being addressed, and as well as the plethora of other, like Mr. Cannella, Mr. Gaines, and everyone around the table. You all have agriculture, and you all have a need for this. And what a cowboy thought was just taking care of one constituent is going to be a much larger package. And the chairman's wisdom is helping me get through this.
Yeah, we'll be working with you on this.
I thank you. And I thank you for the question.
Any other comments from members? Senator Leyva, yes.
I agree. I just was curious, why just onions? I mean, I think there's hundreds of different commodities that our farmers grow and harvest for us. So why just onions?
Okay. You were trying to truck, right?
Yeah.
Your type of truck that they use.
It is only for onions?
That's what this bill was designed for, was just the onion hauler. Actually, there's just one hauler in the state that winds up with this type of truck. It's not that others couldn't start acquiring those type of vehicles, but this is a very limited application. It applied to 50 trucks. I actually looked for 2 years for solutions without having to go legislative to find a solution for them, and it didn't prevail in that arena. I looked at a broader scope. I was asked to take and refine it to just a single, and now I'm being asked to take on the expanded issue.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm new here, and I think that's what I'm learning is things take on different meaning as we move them forward. So
do.
Thank you.
Remember, we'll work with you. And I have to say, I did work when I was a youth, young person, harvesting onions. It was a somewhat unpleasant experience as a teenager. And I know how hard the onion fields are to work in, but I've worked on them for many years, actually.
I suppose you shed a tear or two.
I shed a tear or two. A lot of people didn't want to be around me either. Senator Gaines.
Yeah, just I'll keep it very brief, but thank you for, actually I think the state agency is helping here in terms of the opportunity to broaden it and working with Chairman Bell. So again, I've got cattle, strawberry plants alfalfa, all sorts of things, seed from Assemblymember Dowley in Lassen County. So we'll continue to cheer you on and hopefully be successful in crafting a good bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. We'll work with the Agriculture Committee on this.
Thank you.
Last but not least, is the great Assemblymember from Watsonville, Assemblymember Alejo with AB 2.
I'd like to think you saved the best for last.
How did you get such a low number? Came out
Filed early.
by order. Okay. You have the floor, Assemblymember.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members. I have before you AB 2, which will allow certain blighted areas of California to create a new entity called a Community Revitalization Investment Authority, or a CREA, to work towards tackling issues facing our state's most disadvantaged communities. In 2011, the state dissolved its redevelopment agencies, driven primarily by the cost of redevelopment to the state's general fund, but the needs of struggling communities did not go away. AB 2 will work to change this by investing property tax increments of consenting local agencies other than schools to improve our local communities. This will grow jobs, reduce crime, repair deteriorating and inadequate infrastructure, clean up brownfield sites, and promote affordable housing. This bill requires 25% of the funds to be set aside for affordable housing and will help rebuild impoverished communities across the state. If we don't fix our existing neighborhoods, we all know that cities will then sprawl outward, worsening costly problems like traffic and greenhouse gas emissions. I have worked tirelessly on this concept for the last 3 years, and although the governor did not sign my bill last year, AB 2280, I'm optimistic he will sign this bill, as given the technical changes we have made in this version of the bill to address his concerns. In addition, this year we have made this bill a Latino Legislative Caucus priority because of the benefits it offers to our most disadvantaged communities. This bill received bipartisan support in the Assembly and passed out 5-1 out of the Senate Governance and Finance Committee. I respectfully ask for an aye vote and have some witnesses to speak in support of this bill.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dan Kerrig on behalf of the League of California Cities. We appreciate the author's efforts over the last 3 years to bring back a tool that local agencies can use. As was touched on earlier in the meeting, the loss of redevelopment's been a major impact on local communities. Trying to find ways that we could have tools that we can begin to continue work in our community. So we appreciate this bill and urge your support.
Brian Augusta on behalf of the California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. Our organization, along with our colleagues at Western Center on Law and Poverty, have been working closely with the author over a number of years now to refine this. We think it's an excellent approach, ensures funding for affordable housing, protects people from displacement, and ensures the production of affordable housing. So we urge an aye vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other witnesses in favor, please come forward. You may speak at the table or on the mic.
Go ahead.
Support. Good afternoon, Chair and members. Kira Ross on behalf of the cities of Glendale, Sacramento, and Santa Rosa, all in support.
Christina Lucky with the California Special Districts Association in support.
Alyssa Stinson with the California Building Industry Association in support.
Lauren De Valencia representing the American Planning Association in support.
Okay. Witnesses opposing this bill, please come forward. Okay. Yes, please.
Mr. Chairman, members, I'm Bob Naylor. I represent Fieldstead and Company, and I've been at many hearings with Mr. Alejo. We oppose the bill. Fieldstead and Company is a strong advocate of private property rights, and I do want to raise that issue of whether we should bring back eminent domain for the purpose of subsidizing private development. Let me put, and then I've got a couple of other policy issues very quickly. I should say preliminarily, though, that we do not oppose measures to promote economic development. Last year, SB 628 passed. It was an economic development measure authored by Senator Bell. It was a cleanup measure that passed on the consent calendar today. It did not have eminent domain, and it required a 55% vote for bonding against future tax increment. So we think the legislature should give that bill a chance to work. We oppose eminent domain not just for property rights purposes, but it hasn't worked very well. The properties held by redevelopment agencies when they were dissolved were held on average 11.2 years off the tax rolls. That resulted in a cumulative loss of tax revenues, and this isn't the tax increment, this is property taxes not paid by properties taken, in many cases by eminent domain, and held off the tax rolls. You only need to go down to, that was a cumulative loss of $11.2 billion, $540 million of which was from schools and therefore had to be backfilled by the state government. If you go downtown Sacramento, there are shuttered buildings that have been there since I served in the legislature when they were first shuttered, starting in 1978. Redevelopment agencies are not very good at predicting whether developers will actually show up or at predicting the next recession. And so taking all those properties off the tax rolls should be a problem to the state of California. The second issue is the 55% vote. SB 628 got 21 votes on the Senate floor last year. 2 of the members of this committee voted against the bill, I'm told, because it lowered the vote threshold in infrastructure financing districts from 2/3 to 55%. This bill has no vote threshold. There is no city that will not use this bill instead of SB 628 because there's no vote threshold and it has eminent domain. So the policy issue before the committee is, do you want to eliminate the vote threshold that you just voted in last year? Do you want to bring back eminent domain for private development?
Thank you, Bob. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Marco Mlikatine, and I represent the California Alliance to Protect Private Property Rights, and I'm here before you in opposition to AB 2. Community revitalization investment authorities are not like redevelopment. They are redevelopment, reconstituted and rebranded. AB 2 does not reinvent or reform redevelopment because these authorities and redevelopment share the same business model. The combination of eminent domain for economic gain and tax increment financing. The business model supports the worst form of corporate welfare. Taxpayer dollars are used to forcibly seize private property from unwilling sellers to make room for private development. And ethnic minorities are the most frequent victims of this tool. As in the past, the combination of eminent domain and the potential for profit will only lead to abuse, wasteful spending, and public corruption. This is redevelopment's legacy, and one that will certainly be repeated if AB 2 becomes law. Here's redevelopment's legacy. A state controller audit found no reliable means to measure redevelopment's impact on job growth and eradicating blight, but it did find the inappropriate use of housing funds. The Public Policy Institute found that they generated slightly more tax revenue than they received each year. Might be mindful, this is the blighted property that once existed. The nonpartisan legislative office determined that they failed in their stated mission of creating net new jobs. And I won't repeat the point brought up by our previous speaker. In conclusion, if redevelopment provided a net benefit to the state's economy, the state legislature and the governor would never have abolished redevelopment in the first place. But they did, saving taxpayers over $5 billion a year. The state economy is growing, and so is state revenue, all in the absence of redevelopment. And for those seeking to revitalize their neighborhoods, we share this vision, but rebranding redevelopment is not the solution. It is less taxes and regulations and land use policies that foster transparency and certainty, and not eminent domain abuse. Getting out of the redevelopment business was perhaps the state legislature's greatest legislative achievement, and a bipartisan one, I might add, one that must be sustained to protect California taxpayers and private property owners. Thank you for considering our point of view.
Thank you. We have the author here, opposition or the other opposition to this bill. Questions from the committee. Senator Cannell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Alejo, for bringing this bill forward. I supported it last year. I'm going to support it again this year. I was a local official for 4 years of the Planning Commission, 2 years City Council, 5 years as the mayor. And redevelopment was really the only tool that we had in local government to do anything. We don't have money in cities for the most part. My city was 45,000 people. Most of the money went to public safety. We had very little money left over to do anything else. It was only because of redevelopment that we were able to do anything. I think ending redevelopment in California was probably one of the worst things that we've done since I've been in office. And anything we can do to give cities the tool or additional tools to do some redevelopment in their cities, I think is a very positive thing. Eminent domain, it's the boogeyman we always talk about. We never used it one time when I was the mayor or on the city council. So in some areas, maybe it's being abused, but you know what? Local citizens can get rid of their city councils or their authorities if they want. That's the beauty of having the power vested very closely in local government. If they're not happy with what their council's doing, they can replace them. So I think this is a good bill. I'm looking forward to submitting it, and hopefully we can do more to help cities to have the tools necessary to build upon their city.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Other comments? Senator Bates has a comment.
Yeah, I'm a little curious regarding the manner in which the bill is going to be articulated if we are concerned, and we remain concerned about eminent domain and how that's used. I'm going to read a paragraph from the digest on the affordable housing. It says, requires every community revitalization plan to contain a provision that whenever dwelling units housing persons, families of low and moderate income are destroyed or removed from the low and moderate income housing market as part of the revitalization project, the authority must, within 2 years of such destruction, removal, rehabilitation, develop or construct or cause to be rehabilitated, developed or constructed for rental or sale to persons and families of low or moderate income an equal number of replacement dwelling units at affordable housing costs as defined by state law within the jurisdiction of the authority. So the way I'm seeing this, you've got a group of low-income housing, affordable housing for a group of people. You use eminent domain to go in and take that property and, remove it, rehabilitate it, and then you're going to make the same number of dwelling units available to that same population. The question is, who now owns that? Is it the people from whom you took it with eminent domain, or is it a new group of buyers who have acquired it? And therefore, that's when we get into what was, I think, the reason that redevelopment failed was the abuses. I felt that it should have been approached in a carve-out manner with maybe a scalpel rather than the hatchet, because it was always the abuses that were assigned to the eminent domain and the taking of property that really undermined the value that we had in redevelopment. And that, in this digest, suggests to me that you're going to be taking property from the same low-income group, rebuilding it and giving it to another owner who would charge rent or perhaps put it up for sale to the same group of people who were living there before. So that part, the way it's written here is very confusing.
Yeah, Senator, I'll let the affordable housing advocates in League of Cities address that, but it's my understanding that that's not what the language is. I think the intent is that you preserve the housing stock. If your community has already certain number of units and they're going to use these funds, it's to preserve that so that it doesn't become market rate, because the goal of redevelopment was those units that were made available for low or moderate income families within that particular community, that you would preserve it. And if this was going to be a new tool, that you continue to preserve those tools to refurbish it, upgrade it, rather than having it go market rate and then becoming unaffordable for so many families. But I'll let the League of Cities or Brian wait.
Senator, as we read those provisions, I mean, obviously going back, working with the affordable housing advocates over the years, they were always very concerned if affordable housing was removed, that they wanted to make sure it was actually replaced. Those provisions that are in that bill are more stringent than even that were in prior law. As we read it, it makes it, there's a real disincentive for an entity to look at displacing affordable housing under that law, because obviously there are quite strict provisions in terms of replacement requirements. It may occur, but there's the way the law is drafted, this bill is drafted, there's going to be a major incentive for an entity not to get rid of affordable housing and to make sure if it is changed, it is replaced.
Move the bill.
There's a motion on the floor for the bill. We have any other questions? If not, we'll call the roll, please. You want to close it?
Yeah, Senator, just to close up, first of all, I want to thank you and your staff, and just to alleviate some fears, that this bill does stay true to the original intent of former redevelopment law. This has the most accountability measures. several public hearings, annual review, audits, and also the public is empowered to have a referendum process. If this new entity is not meeting the needs of their community as they laid out in their plan, well, the public could shut them down if they're not meeting those goals. That's why we've addressed a lot of the abuses and concerns that from previous redevelopment. We address those, and again, it's trying to help those communities that have high crime, high poverty, and high unemployment. And we all know that since redevelopment went away, communities have been asking for a new tool for economic development, a tool to clean up brownfield sites, and a new tool to meet affordable housing needs for their own local communities. I respectfully ask for an aye vote, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you. I support this bill. This is a very small scale compared to the redevelopment. It's not analogous with the old redevelopment at all, because it focuses on our dire needed, low income, impoverished neighborhoods that need help. And I hope that would be recognized, that's important, that we still have a commitment to help areas that need help in terms of community development. I urge an aye vote on this.
Thank you, Senator.
So we have a motion. We have to call the roll, please.
The motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. Bell.
Aye.
Bell, aye. Canela.
Aye.
Canela, aye. Allen.
Aye.
Allen, aye. Bates. Bates, no. Gaines. Gaines, no. Galgiani. Galgiani, aye. Leyva. Leyva, aye. McGuire. McGuire, aye. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Roth. Roth, aye. Wachowski. Wachowski, aye.
Thank you, Senator. 9-2.
9-2, that bill is out.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We're ready to, that's the last item. We want to lift the calls on bills.
Sir? You have to go present.
I have to make a presentation in the Human Services Committee, so I'll turn the gavel over to.
We've got all members present, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to lift the calls. We're going to go through one time. We're going to start off with the consent calendar. We're going to lift the calls. We're going to start with the consent calendar. Can we have the secretary call the roll?
Allen. Allen, aye. Galgiani. Galgiani, aye. McGuire.
We're going.
Consent.
We're calling roll right now.
On the consent calendar, McGuire.
This is tough. Yeah.
McGuire, aye. Mendoza. Mendoza, aye. Wachowski. Wachowski, aye.
All right.
That's out 11-0.
That bill is out. 11-0. Next will be, we just heard Alejo. That's out.
I'm going to do file order.
File order. I crossed mine out here, so I've got.
Yeah, it's okay. File item 3, AB 35 by Assemblymember 2.
And
the motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations.
Hey guys, can we keep the chatter down? We're going to run through the roll here, so go ahead.
The current vote is 6-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Allen? Allen, aye. Gaines? Yes.
35.
Gaines, aye. Galgiani? McGuire? McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. So that's out 10-0.
That bill is out 10-0. Next, item number 5, AB 194.
By Assemblymember Frazier, the motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. The current vote is 6-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Bates? Gaines? Gaines, aye. Galgiani? Galgiani, aye. McGuire? McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. That's out 10-0.
That bill is out 10-0. Next, file item 7, AB 422.
By Assemblymember McCarty, the motion is due pass as amended. The current vote is 6-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Allen? Allen, aye. Bates? Bates, aye. Gaines? Gaines, aye. McGuire? McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. That's out 11-0.
That bill is out 11-0. Next, file item 8, AB 738, Assemblywoman Gaines.
The motion is due pass as amended. The current vote is 7-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Gaines? Gaines, aye. Galgiani? Galgiani, aye. McGuire? McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. That's out 11-0.
That bill is out 11-0. Next, file item 10, AB 808, Assemblymember Ridley Thomas.
The motion is due pass as amended and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. The current vote is 8-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Galgiani? Galgiani, aye. McGuire? McGuire, I. Mendoza. Mendoza, I. That's out 11-0.
That bill is out 11-0. Next up, file item 12, AB 904, Assemblymember Perea.
The motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Environmental Quality. The current vote is 4-0, Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Bates? Gaines? Aye. Gaines, aye. Galgiani? Galgiani, aye. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. Wachowski. So that is 9-0, that's out.
That bill is out, 9-0. Next up, file item 13, AB 906, Assemblymember Cooper.
The motion is due pass as amended. The current vote is 7-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Gaines? No. Gaines, no. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. That's out 10-1.
That bill is out 10-1. File item 14 is a 2-year bill. Next up, file item 15, AB 1250, Assemblymember Bloom.
The motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. The current vote is 7-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Galgiani? Galgiani, aye. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. That bill is out 11-0.
Bill is out 11-0. Next up, file item 16, AB 1422, Assemblymember Cooper.
The motion is due pass as amended and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. The current vote is 6-0. Chair and Vice Chair voting aye. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Gaines? Galgiani? Aye. Galgiani, aye. McGuire? 16. McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye. Gaines?
Gaines,
aye.
That bill is out 11-0. Next, final bill, file item 17, AB 1461, Assemblywoman Gonzalez.
The motion is due pass and refer to the Committee on Appropriations. The current vote is 4-2. Chair voting aye, Vice Chair voting no. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Gaines? No. Gaines, no. Galgiani? Aye. Galgiani, aye. McGuire? Aye. McGuire, aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mendoza, aye.
Just a second. Just one second.
So that's out 8-3.
That bill is out 8-3. Yes, Mr. James? Yes.
We've already closed the roll. I'm sorry. We cannot change.
No.
So it has to happen on the actual vote?
Yes.
Well, I closed that.
Yeah.
Yeah, once the vote is counted.
We're adjourned.
It was just the